Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Gino.
Thank you. Thank you for responding. You usually don't. We're here again. We're back again, Sam.
Back again. We have a special guest this time, though.
Well, don't spoil it.
There is a special guest. Spoil it?
Yeah. Don't spoil who the special guest is.
Dave Page.
Not yet. We got to get him on here, though. So thanks, everyone, for logging in. We got a couple of minutes before we get started. We're going to give people a chance to log on, but today we're going to talk about everything you need to know about ADA website accessibility. Right, Sam?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
You know what ADA stands for? If you don't worry, we're going to cover it.
Perfect. I'm here to learn.
Good. Good. All right. So give us a few minutes and we'll get started. Sam, you ready to go?
I mean, if I'm not, we're still going, aren't we?
Yes, basically. Okay. Here we go. So, as always, for these webinars, I'm joined with Sam. My name is Gino, CSO at Dealer eProcess. Sam, what's your title these days?
We could go with VP of Product Development. It's shorter than the whole DIR of product innovation.
You look more like a DIR.
I do look like a DIR.
Especially in that photo. So, Sam, this is exciting. This is a special webinar because we have a special guest today, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Why don't you intro our special guest?
I think you do a better job.
Okay, fair enough. Our special guest today is Tim Mills. Tim, say hello to the crowd.
How's it going, everyone?
So, Tim here is our Director of Operations and Integrations. Tim,
or Mr. Director, as we call him.
Sure. Tim, what does that mean? What does your job entail?
So I work with other companies. Oftentimes, our customers are interacting with third-party companies, so I try to make that as seamless and easy as possible, and just make sure that everything's running smoothly.
Cool. And lately, you've been involved heavily, in fact, are leading the charge on our end as far as our efforts to make our platform ADA compliant, correct?
Correct. Last week marks 1 year that we have been working on ADA changes for Dealer eProcess customers.
Cool. So we are happy to have Tim here, and we're going to be talking all about ADA compliance. And so here's kind of a rough outline for ourselves here to kind of go through today. We want to talk about what dealers need to know about ADA compliance, what it really means for you and your website. We're going to hit on how to know whether or not your site is compliant, really what you need to be aware of to make sure that you guys don't get hit with any sort of lawsuits, for noncompliance and everything like that. And then we're going to talk about some differences between the ADA compliance solutions that are out there. Now, I open this question to Sam or Tim. How big of a difference are there in terms of what's being offered to automotive dealers for ADA compliance?
Well, it's a two-part question. It's what's being offered and what's being promised. Those are two very different things, and there's everything from a simple plugin on a website where they're going to say this is going to make you ADA compliant, which actually doesn't. And then there are companies out there that are saying they're making the efforts towards being ADA compliant, which are also not always the case.
So basically what we have to watch out for is ADA tools that claim compliancy when in actuality they just don't do the job.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I hate to say it, I'm not picking on anybody in particular, but when this all kind of came to light and became a situation where OEMs were receiving letters about arbitration, dealers were getting letters, everyone saw this as a money grab to create a product and be able to kind of market it and kind of sell it with false hope behind it.
We don't want to do money grabs here.
No, we don't do money grabs.
No, we want to build something right. So with that, down to the basics first. I asked you earlier, Sam, what does ADA stand for? You didn't have an answer for me, so I'll tell you. ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the act was, Tim, you might know this, when was the ADA first put in the marketplace? in the world?
I believe it was under George Bush.
Okay, that's not true, but it's been around for a long time. But basically, in the world of websites, ADA compliance is kind of a little bit of a newer thing. And really what caused that is what's called Title III of the ADA, which kind of described websites as places of public accommodation. And essentially what that means for any business is if consumers are going to your place of business, you're including your website now as your quote-unquote place of business. So your place of business has to accommodate all people regardless of, whatever disability they may or may not have. So this interpretation of Title III in the world of websites is what's causing all of this kind of onslaught of lawsuits being sent all over the place for websites not being ADA compliant. Websites that are seen with significant inaccessible components are being viewed as in violation of Title III, and attorneys are taking note of that. In fact, they're kind of starting to get aggressive in the industry, and basically, it's a gray area at the end of the day, right?
Well, let's talk about bullet point number 2 just quickly.
Yeah.
So things like that would be to where menu structures, as you would use a mouse to go ahead and click on it. Some people with disabilities that cannot use a mouse would have to use some form of keyboard to be able to tab over or go through. If things are not coded correctly, the keyboard functions of navigating a website or using some of the other screen readers and things like that is what this is kind of geared and centered around.
So kind of the layman's thought process there is almost like not having a ramp at your place of business for somebody who's in a wheelchair. If your website doesn't work with their, let's say, dictation software for a person who's blind and the site can't be read to them, it's tantamount to not being able to do business with that.
Yeah, and like you said with the wheelchair ramp thing, and these plugins are kind of amounting to, and I hate to make this comparison, but the plugin is basically if somebody went out front of your business at your physical brick and mortar shop and painted a handicap accessible logo on one of the blocks of concrete, but it still had a curb in front of it. Mm-hmm. It looks like it's handicap accessible, but it's not. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what we're seeing with these plugins.
And then I think the most important part here is bullet point number 3. ADA is seen as a strict liability law, which basically what that means is that if you're being, attacked for ADA noncompliance, you kind of can't talk your way out of it.
Compliance or conformance?
We'll talk about that. But I'm talking about compliance. So right now, though, there's no quote-unquote legal prescription that exists for website accessibility. There's certain guidelines that we're going to cover and everything like that, but regardless, that's not preventing companies from getting sued for noncompliance. And Sam, there's some pretty high-profile companies out there that are getting sued. Number one, I don't know if you're aware of this, Domino's is actually in the middle of a lawsuit. I think the suit actually started in 2016 by a man who was visually impaired and was trying to order a Domino's pizza from their app, and the app just wasn't working with his dictation software. He couldn't get the order completed, and so he filed a suit against Domino's. He basically wasn't able to get his pizza, but, as a pizza enthusiast, he was not happy about that. So Domino's is not free from this, nor is anybody like Beyonce. Queen Bee's even getting sued left and right by actually a woman who said her site could not read off to her the new music and she couldn't listen to it and so on and so forth. So auto dealers is one thing, but this is pervasive across all industries. So we always have to now ask ourselves, are we ADA compliant? So Tim, I'm going to turn this over to you. What does ADA compliance really mean for automotive websites?
Yeah, so there's kind of 2 main factors with it. There's an organization called the W3C, which is the World Wide Web Consortium. And what that is, it's a private group of kind of internet experts. And what they do is they make a set of rules called WCAG. And while they call them rules, these are actually guidelines. And this is more or less, here's how to code your site to make it as accessible as possible. So compliance is understanding these rules that the W3C has made, or these guidelines. Conformance is making your website as accessible as possible by following these guidelines.
Okay. So you're saying at the very base level, if dealers wanted to go learn about what ADA compliance really means, the best starting point would be to find these WCAG guidelines.
Correct. W3C has some very good pages on their website about it.
Let me ask you this, what does WCAG stand for? I'm going to quiz you now.
WCAG stands for Web Content Accessibility Guidelines.
Good. I'm glad you didn't have to read that off your phone or anything. So like you said, now let's explain this, because this is an important thing to notate too. These are, as I say, guidelines, right?
Correct.
This is not law. This is not something that's strictly, quote unquote, enforceable if I were to sue somebody for their websites for not following these, quote unquote, guidelines, but they give us a good roadmap, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So understanding the WCAG guidelines is important, and you had said they were written by the World Wide Web Consortium. Now, explain kind of what we're looking at right here. When you talk about these guidelines and how they're referring to web content for the disabled, user, what do we need to keep in mind?
So we need to keep in mind that there are people with disabilities trying to access your website, and that can be people with vision disabilities, so blind people, people who can't use their hands to use a mouse or keyboard, or people who are deaf so they can't hear things, that you have videos, things like that. So something like closed captioning would be something that's required. And what the WCAG means to do is have your website be coded in an expected way, because depending on the disability, these people will be using software on their computer to help them navigate the internet. And when we have our websites coded in this expected way, any single one of those softwares that they're using will be able to navigate your website successfully.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about those softwares in a minute here, because those are very important to keep in mind when we talk about making your website ADA compliant, because there's some kind of synergistic things we need to think about from a coding standpoint between those softwares and what we're doing on our end, right? So basically, we've covered so far what ADA compliance means, why a dealer needs to be worried about it, how it's starting to become more and more of a hot topic amongst any industry, where people are starting to get a little lawsuit happy if they notice a site isn't ADA compliant. So at the end of the day, I know what all the dealers on the call want to know is, how do they make sure that their websites are compliant? And I think what we hear a lot in the industry is that it's as simple as putting on one of the handful of ADA compliance plugins on your website and you're good to go, right? Is that the case, Tim or Sam? Anybody want to chime in? Is that really going to satisfy ADA compliance if you just rely on a simple plugin?
I defer to the ADA consultant in the room.
The short answer is no. It can help probably deter lawsuits, but I guarantee any website that just relies on a plugin, we could navigate through and find some issues with and open up a lawsuit if we wanted to.
Because at the start of all of this here, we talked about how the ADA is looking at the source code of the website, right? That's a big part of the WCAG, the guidelines that W3C put together. Too many acronyms.
A lot of W's.
With all of this.
A lot of W's.
Yeah. But these plugins don't fix the source code. In fact, only the web provider can do this. They're the only ones that have access to that source code. So if you have a web provider out there that's telling you, don't worry about the ADA, we've got a plugin for you, it'll fix everything, be a little bit cautious of that. The reason that a lot of providers are doing that, Tim, and I think you talked about this earlier, is we've spent over a year recoding our platform to be ADA compliant. It's very time consuming, it's costly, but it's the right fix to do. It's not like putting a Band-Aid on an open wound and hoping that'll solve the problem. The other party is that if your user can't use this third-party plugin for any reason, or the other issue with these plugins, I should say, you're still liable to get sued, right?
Right.
Because there's conflicting softwares that could occur on the site. Also, you're kind of at the mercy of these other providers too. So Tim, do you know, top of your head, I'm going to put you in the hot seat here, how long have these ADA compliant plugins been around?
Some of them we've been seeing been around for a couple of months, some have been around for a couple of years, but all of them seem relatively new to kind of these recent lawsuits. So
with any sort of relatively new technology, would you say there's a bit of concern with, I guess, the stability of that platform, with it not having been stress tested enough to know if it's actually something you can kind of rely on?
Absolutely, and all of these are very new to the automotive industry.
So you've got that as a potential problem. This is another issue, and I think you noticed this morning too. If a third-party plugin is on the website, it could conflict with other code that a user might be using on their browser. Like you saw an ad blocker break a plugin today, didn't you?
Correct.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, and this is something that I deal with working with integrations with other third-party companies. Code is very complex. Timing of when code loads, what kind of libraries are using, They can conflict a lot of times. Part of my job is to make sure all third parties play nice with our website. And then your website is also very complex as well. So at any given time, let's say you add a new chat plugin, or your current chat plugin makes an update to their code and that conflicts with your ADA plugin, you're going to be open to lawsuits and you're going to be liable for that. Unfortunately, the courts aren't going to place blame onto your chat provider or your ADA plugin. That's going to go to you.
Mm-hmm. And things like an ad blocker, which none of us here can control whether or not a user has an ad blocker on their browser. If that stops, say, AudioEye from populating on a website, and that user also happens to be disabled, you're potentially open for a suit, right?
And we've also been noticing that browsers are getting much more strict in what they're allowing. Most of the ad blockers are running natively. Firefox and Chrome are starting to block more and more scripts natively without even needing a plugin.
Safari as well, too.
Yes, Safari as well. You know, they're blocking cookies already from third parties, so it's only a matter of time before plugins like this could be at risk. And we never know what changes the browsers are going to make.
Yeah, and for an example, we just had this last Friday. It's loosely related to this. We had something from Toyota that lives on our websites that Safari and Firefox made an update and it broke. So it was completely unusable and rendered the site useless to anybody using Safari or Firefox. So in the same sense that like some of the best built technology can still conflict because of what the browser changes, that's going to really kind of put these third-party plugins kind of out the door quickly.
So would you agree in that it's even that much more important to write your source code in a compliant way because your
100%.
browser updates are not going to impact that?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen a couple of letters from dealer organizations in the states where lawsuits are most common saying, hey, these plugins are a great Band-Aid, but really your web provider should be fixing their source code to be as accessible as possible.
And Tim, you mentioned this last point here a minute ago, and I want to circle back to it because this is, I think, the big thing nobody's talking about. If you're a disabled user, most likely you've got one of these many options in terms of software that you can have running on your computer that help people who are disabled use the internet and browse websites. I think this is just a sampling of the softwares that are out there, but there's a ton of options that disabled users implement on their own native system that help them kind of get through whatever they need to on a website. If a consumer, Tim, is using one of these softwares, is it safe to say that that is most likely a disabled user?
Yes.
So would you say that if we detect that a user is using the software, or if this is users using the software in general, and an quote-unquote ADA compliant plugin conflicts with this software and does not work, then essentially really the segment of the population that we're building all this for isn't getting the benefit of the ADA compliant plugin in the first place?
Correct.
So I just like when you say correct. Just makes my points that much more
I
easier
very
to
rarely
make.
agree with Gino, but
That's right. So basically, anybody using one of these types of software, if it impacts the plugin in a negative way, then you basically have a plugin on your site that's not catering to the people it's designed to cater to.
Correct.
So that doesn't do you any good. In fact, this is an example of an audio Iplayer, which I believe Dealer.com and Dealer Inspire both use, that it says right here within its tool, it's kind of funny when I read this player is not intended as a substitute for a screen reader. So what's it actually doing to somebody who's maybe visually impaired that needs the screen read to them?
It's a false flag.
Yeah.
It's just saying that there's something here that could potentially help, but really the people that are going to be utilizing what the source code being coded properly would be doing through their application, it's just kind of mimicking that in a way that makes it seem like something has been done on the platform.
Right. So most of the people that already have this disability software on there wouldn't even necessarily use AudioEye in the first place.
They wouldn't be
using
it.
Right.
And that's why this is considered a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
I think the plugins are great to help your website be as accessible as possible. I think it's great to deter lawsuits away early on while people don't really know what's going on with ADA and websites. But in the long term, you have to fix your website because, like Gino said, anyone with a disability already is already using their own software because they need to access obviously more than your dealer's website with a plugin. And what this plugin is really trying to do is mimic the software that they're doing and make it as easy as possible. But again, they're not using the software. So if you're relying on a plugin to make the proper changes so links can be read aloud, alt text can be read aloud, things like that, they're not using that plugin, so your website is going to be vulnerable for lawsuits.
Yeah, someone's not coming to the website and discovering for the first time that they're colorblind and going, oh, luckily this tool's already installed on the website to read.
I hope not.
I hope not, at least, yeah.
So basically, it's like our friend Clark Griswold here trying to plug holes at the Hoover Dam with a piece of gum.
I thought that was a video of you.
No, I'm not that clever.
You have that shirt, though.
I do. It's a nice shirt. Thank you. So yeah, we got to get away from the idea of, put a plugin on the site and we're fine, because it's just not going to get the job done. And we realized that, like Tim said, a long time ago, almost a year ago already. So we decided we needed to do more than just put a simple plugin in place, which is why we partnered with, Tim, I would say probably two of the best companies out there.
I think so.
For ADA compliance. The first company that we partnered with is a company called UsableNet. Tim, tell us about UsableNet.
So UsableNet is more of an auditing company and a scanning company, meaning they're not going to do anything, they're not going to change your website for you. We paid them a lot of money to have their developers audit our entire platform, meaning they had 4 people use all those softwares that Gino listed off, test our websites. They went through, used their proprietary software to make sure that everything was coded according to Wcag guidelines. And then we spent about 8 months with a full development team dedicated solely to Wcag updates and ADA accessibility, making sure that the DEP platform was up to code.
Yeah, you're missing one thing though that we also did. Once we did a lot of that, UsableNet hired people to use screen reader software and create user journeys to go through and go ahead and test to make sure that the things we implemented were changed.
Mm-hmm. So, and it was kind of alarming too, at least in my opinion, when we saw the first results of the first scan that UsableNet sent back with the amount of stuff that had to be fixed. It was how many items was it?
Several thousand items. It was a huge CSV file or Excel file with just a list of changes that we needed to do across the platform, and I would say it was close to 10,000 to start. And that would probably be normal with any single website provider right now.
Yeah. Good news is we fixed those all at a global level, correct?
Yep.
So now all of our sites that do launch with this fix in place.
Yep.
So we've already got a leg up.
And sites that are live.
And sites that are live too, correct. Thank you, Sam. Don't want to misstate that one.
Yeah, right.
So we've already got a little bit of a leg up on this whole ADA compliance issue. Now, Tim, we recently partnered with another company.
Yep.
Accessibility. Why would we partner with 2 companies? Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, this was a little bit of some force from the OEMs wanting a front-end tool, but also we realized that this is something that dealers wanted. But this can help. You have content coming into your website from the OEM, from third-party providers. We have a CMS where dealers can make pages, where their third-party advertising companies can make pages. They can send in tickets for anyone to kind of create a page for them. Accessibility will kind of help deal with any issues that come through on those pages or that content until a DEP developer can go through the audit and actually fix the issues for you in the back end in the source code.
Mm-hmm. So this is kind of actually now a good marriage of the quote-unquote front-end plugin that we kind of just spent a little bit of time shitting all over, and the back-end work that we've done with the team here to kind of give some added protection to the dealerships when they do add new content or when the OEM uploads new content to their site, or maybe a third-party tool is being added or third-party code. This at least has some level of protection before we can get in from a coding perspective and go fix things, right?
Correct. There is no seal of approval for being ADA compliant. I think that was a big misunderstanding early on in this adventure, was that people thought it was a one-time fix, make my site ADA compliant, put a stamp on it, and I'm good to go. The reality is a lot of upkeep's needed. So like Gino said, it's a good marriage where this front-end plugin is the closest thing you'll get to a seal. And again, its main purpose is really to kind of deter people away from lawsuits and say, hey, we're on top of our ADA game.
Mm-hmm. So just to kind of recap of what we're doing on our end to make sure that you guys don't ever run into a situation where any sort of attorney can send you a lawsuit. We've handled, like Tim said, 8 months worth of coding on over 10,000 items that UsableNet identified from our platform that were not ADA compliant. So we covered much of what you guys would be liable for if you are on our platform. So that's taken care of. We have Accessibility on as a kind of a fail-safe or a safety net a little bit, as far as new content coming to the site to make sure that there is some level of ADA compliance protection on there. Now, Tim, your team is scanning our sites monthly. correct?
Correct.
For any sort of negative marks coming through UsableNet and other scanning software that we might use to identify issues, and then we're performing a full-blown audit every quarter too, right? So there's ongoing scans and updates to the platform to make sure that we're always maintaining compliance. So this is an important thing to, again, reiterate. It's time consuming, it's costly, but we have to make sure that all of the code is written properly, right?
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we're just going to have some issues. Whoops. So basically, at the end of the day, what we're doing here at Dealer eProcess, I think, as we've kind of said, is we're doing more than the Band-Aid approach. We don't want to just rely on some other company's technology to potentially make your site ADA compliant. We want to go in and fix our site from the ground up to make sure that it's written right for our users and your customers. So just wrapping it up, I mean, ADA compliance, it is a must-have for dealers these days. They must all be doing everything that they can to become ADA compliant. It sucks, but automotive's just been targeted by a lot of attorneys lately due to lack of compliance, and it's kind of been like shooting fish in a barrel for a lot of these attorneys that we see so many lawsuits every day that it's just starting to become a little bit of a problem. They don't need really much of a reason to go after these automotive sites for ADA non-compliance because so many sites aren't compliant, but simply relying on the plugin is not a complete fix. It still leaves you vulnerable. It still can cause problems with actual disability software on a user's computer, and fixing the source code at the end of the day is the best way to ensure that your website is compliant, which is what we've done and are continuing to do here. So, not one and done, making sure everything's always running smoothly. This is an ongoing process. If anyone ever tells you your site is 100% ADA compliant, Tim, what would you say to that?
They're wrong.
Okay.
They don't know what they're talking about.
Fair enough. So be wary of that. Any provider or anybody out there telling you, yeah, we have a one-time fix, it's a plugin, you'll be 100% compliant. It's not necessarily true. Sam, you've been quiet. You've been quiet this webinar.
I've been watching the show. You know, it's the Tim Mills show.
It is. Tim, maybe we'll have you back one day.
I hope so.
Okay, good. Well, with that, are there any questions? You see how I kept the gifts a little consistent this time?
Yes, they are. Oh, yeah, you kept them all from the same film. Mostly. There was a Pirates of the Caribbean one in there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we do have a question here. Is this a law, or when will it be a law?
Technically, right now, it is not a law.
It's not a law.
But
that one came in a little early.
Yes, people are being sued, and most courts are favoring the people that are suing, aka not the dealers. Most of the time it's a settlement, and it's, hey, pay us $50,000, X amount of cash up front, and then also have a plan in place to continually monitor your website. California, there's a unique law or an old court ruling where they can sue you for up to $4,000 per violation you have. So say you have an SRP with a whole bunch of the same violations.
Infinite scroll.
That is $4,000.
Infinite scroll SRP listings will get you every time.
So, and that's where it's very ambiguous and very gray and muddy. It is not a law. The Department of Justice made two separate organizations to try to control and monitor the Wcag guidelines for websites. They got rid of those early last year. Just because they said there's no way to monitor this, and that's when lawyers started to smell blood and go for it. So yes, it is not a law, but it is something that you just have to do, otherwise you're going to be liable for a lawsuit.
Got it. We got another one here I think is going to be both for you and Gino. I think it came in probably right after your closing comments about not being 100% compliant. If I go with Dealer eProcess and I get sued, am I covered by Dealer eProcess? Ooh, good question.
The short answer to that is yes. We actually, if you are using our ADA compliant tools, which there's an added cost for, it's not much, but if you are using our tools, yes, we will cover you in the event of a lawsuit.
Yep.
Anything to add?
No, nothing really to add.
Okay. We have another question. Who is liable for any non-compliance? Is it the dealer? Is it the OEM? Is it us?
I mean, it could be one or all three, or a combination of them. I mean, it really depends. If it's something on our platform, again, we are with tools that we have covered However, if it's something that we did on our platform, I mean, it would be us. If it's something the dealer uploaded or whatever it would be, I mean, it could be them.
It depends on the source of non-compliance.
Exactly. And
right?
and having a CMS to where somebody can upload a page and do all kinds of different things, I mean, really, this is the trouble of ADA currently.
I mean, you have to really look at it and find out where this non-compliant flag is coming from. If you're using, let's say, Gubagoo as your chat provider, and it's the Gubagoo chat box that's getting flagged for non-compliance, technically, Gubagoo would be at fault there. However, the customer is not going to sue Gubagoo. They're going to sue the dealer.
They're suing you.
Yeah, and most courts have been finding the dealers the ones who are liable because it is your website. You are the one putting a non-compliant tool on your website. So all the lawsuits have been going in favor against the dealers there, and not third parties or website providers.
Well, I wouldn't say it's going in favor of the dealers.
Yeah.
Out of favor.
Out of favor.
Right. Got another question here. Will the CMS now auto-upload alt text for images? Sam, that's for you.
Yeah, so we updated. So when you upload a picture, we now require that you use alt text. If you don't put in alt text, you can't upload the picture. Also, any OEM, I know several of the OEMs, they will send through banner ads, things like that. We make sure that we're automatically adding alt text to those.
So, to answer the question, alt text won't be automatically added. You have to still manually type it in.
Yeah, because it is a thing that it has to be relevant to the picture, so we obviously can't know that if you're uploading, a picture of a certain car or your dealership. We can't systematically know that, but we'll require you to type in a little snippet describing the picture.
Well, Sam, any word on photo recognition that we could just, make that automatic?
No comment?
No comment.
Okay. The technology is almost there, but it's not reliable yet.
Yeah. I mean, even with the car ones that we're looking into currently or working on, some things get misclassified. We had a headlight switch recently get identified as a gear shifter. So, I mean, it's not perfect. So
no, it's not
close.
perfect.
It's close, though.
But
as soon as it's ready, we'll for sure do it.
At the very least, our platform will not allow any photo to be uploaded without any alt text. Correct?
Yep. Our CMS has been updated to be as ADA compliant as possible, and we have done everything to make it so you can't add any code to your site that's incorrect.
Yeah, we even did the promo banner feature. You can pick a combination of colors for how you want the promo banner to show up versus text in the background. We actually have the ADA rules built into it.
It automatically detects the colors.
You can't do yellow with white text. It just won't even let you upload it.
We kind of have an ADA police officer developer here who will just go around and make sure that everything is ADA compliant when we're rolling it out or conforming to WCAG guidelines.
We got another question here. So the question is, how about videos that can only be uploaded from YouTube? So like a YouTube Embed Code.
Yeah, so videos from YouTube are kind of a different beast. We're still researching that. YouTube includes closed captions. They have their automatic closed captions, as terrible as they might be. I believe that keeps them conforming with WCAG guidelines. But that's something that we're looking into. With our CMS, you can only upload through YouTube or embed a video from YouTube. So when you're adding a video to your website from YouTube, we're making sure that you're adding all the proper code to it.
So that's interesting. I know the auto caption software on YouTube is good, not great, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that caption that's generated also then able to be read by a dictation software? Do you know?
I do not know, actually.
Because that wouldn't necessarily run through there, so it'd be interesting to kind of dig into that one. So we're kind of at the mercy of Google as far as what YouTube is or isn't doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny how often that happens. I have a question for you, Tim. With the OEMs, we know that there are certain compliance guidelines we have to follow. For example, BMW uses a lot of grayscale coloring in all of their content, right? Which I would imagine could be a little bit tricky for somebody with visual impairment.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing, or are we working with the OEM at all to kind of identify in their own, let's say, style guides, any sort of compliance issues that need to be fixed?
Yeah, so we've already worked with the OEMs. They've been in touch with us kind of asking what our plans were for ADA conformance. We have a set of approved templates that dealers can choose from based on different manufacturers, and we've already put all those templates through the UsableNet software, so we've made sure all the colors are okay, anything like that. And then also, if you were to put up a non-compliant color, something that didn't contrast enough to the background per se, our usableness software during its monthly scan, it would identify that, and then we would just kind of let you know, saying like, hey, you got to change that color. Just let us know one that works for you.
Yeah. Okay. We have another question here, and this could be for either of you. It says, what about alt text for the inventory images?
So we already have been adding alt text for inventory images for quite some time now. So we're actually pretty good covered in that one.
Okay. So inventory images will come through with alt text automatically applied. The dealer doesn't have to do anything on their end.
Yeah, you guys won't have to adjust that. We'll kind of add the relevant vehicle data as the alt text to your image.
Cool. All right. Looks like there were no other questions. Tim, thanks for being our special guest.
Thanks for having me. Always fun.
Sam, thanks for being in the room.
I'm just here for, moral support, really.
Of course, naturally. So thanks again, everybody. We will be sending out this recording so you can go back and listen to it if you wanted to. We will also be sending out a kind of a one-sheeter outlining our approach to ADA compliance. And then we have another question here, which is a good closing question. When will we see the cost for this product and a rollout time frame? Tim, you and I were just talking about this. Rollout's coming around the corner quickly, right?
Yeah, our contract's being written up right now, or the addendum that you guys will be signing. We're hoping to start sending that out Monday.
Any word on cost?
Yeah, so cost, we've actually been working with OEMs and just seeing what other providers are.
So it's basically we have to wait for a lot of the programs that we're into.
Yeah, but essentially no matter what provider, every single ADA package is going to be around the same cost.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Well, we'll get you guys all that info as it comes out. Like I said, we'll be sending out the one-sheeter to everybody on this call, as well as the link to this recording. And then as soon as rollout occurs, roughly sometime next week, we'll have all the relevant timeline and cost information to send to you as well. So really appreciate everyone joining us today. Sam, what's next month's topic? I ask you this every time, and you never have an answer.
You make the topics.
I am trying to give you a chance here.
You're the steak, I'm the sizzle. Come on, we've talked about this.
You're terrible sizzle, but okay. All right, thanks, everyone. We'll see you next month. Take care.